Welcome to my dojo. This is Kung Fu Pizza Party, and I'm your host, Brandon Knight. And today, in honor of International Women's Day, I am here to review the iconic Blaxploitation film Foxy Brown, starring the legendary Pam Grier. Now let's dive right into today's episode, because as always here on Kung Fu Pizza Party, I seek to deliver high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and serve up some wisdom one slice at a time. But first, before the review, I would like to take a moment to thank all of the women out there like Pam Grier, Michelle Yeoh, Cynthia Rothrock, Ronda Rousey, who they have at different points throughout their career walked so other women can run. And honestly, you can almost go in that order of the women that I listed there to show just kind of the progression of the representation of women in combat sports, in martial art films, and just being a voice for their own perspective, their own experiences, and shedding light for the rest of us of trying to see that, like, you just don't have to be a buff jack dude to be a kick-ass hero. And also, like I did recently in the review of Black Cobra for Black History Month, I also want to make sure that we don't also overlook all of the women out there who are masters, instructors, who have never starred in a Hollywood blockbuster, but have for years now been making an impact on their communities, on their students, by sharing their wisdom, by being an inspiration to other young girls, to get into the martial arts. Because there's even kind of this, I'm not naive to the fact that the martial arts can very easily become an area for the boys kind of thing, and it's not, and it shouldn't be, and all should be welcomed to learn to protect themselves and to defend themselves, and everyone has a story that they would like to share. And so just thank you to all of the women out there, whether you've made it to the big screen, headline pay-per-views, or you're working in your local dojo. Just thank you for what you do. My Jeet Kune Do instructor, Master Kiesling, she's one of those women who, if you saw her just out and about, you probably would find her to be like the most unintimidating person ever. Short, small, pastor's wife, kind of dressed like a stereotypical pastor's wife, whatever, you can kind of picture that for yourself. But man, in the dojo, of all of my instructors, I've never had a tougher instructor. She would, not that she was like angry and get in your face, but man, she pulled her strikes, but like very little. Like, she was tough as nails on us, both in just technique and also in character formation as well. Really kind of the kind of instructor that was always calling you upward, pushing you further, that kind of instructor. So very thankful for having her be a part of my martial art journey. And yes, so once again, thank you to all of you out there who have been sharing your perspective and being a part of making martial arts, broadly speaking, not just a one-sided affair, just something for the boys. It's something for all. Now, let's get into the review of what is arguably the greatest Blaxploitation film, the most iconic one, and starring the woman who is, you could very well make the argument, the first female action hero. So Foxy Brown is an iconic Blaxploitation film for two primary reasons. The first one is that this is the movie that cemented how and who a leading action woman should look like in a film. And I don't mean that by appearance. I mean like the blueprint. How a woman would then go on to carry herself in future films. This is the movie. Pam Grier is the blueprint. She sets the example. She sets the bar for how women in films to come in this genre. And again, you can make the argument for women in general who would go on to become action stars, how they would carry themselves in their films as well. Because prior to this point, and you also get this from the kung fu films coming out of Hong Kong during this time period as well, is that women were essentially a plot device. You know, the hero's girl gets captured and now it becomes personal, or even more personal because it was already pretty personal for other reasons. Like, that's just kind of like, they're the love interest. They're the person who needs to get captured to add a little bit more tension in the final act. You know, it's always that kind of, the women always served that kind of a role. Pam Grier comes in to Foxy Brown and also her previous film from 1973, Coffee, where I just don't even know really how to explain it. Like, how she is a strong, independent woman who could take care of herself, who is no nonsense, and isn't afraid to use her beauty to her advantage to get ahead of the bad guys. I don't know how else really to put it. There might be a more elegant way to say all that, but these roles that Pam Grier plays in these two films, and particularly here with Foxy Brown, starts the ball rolling for what this is going to look like in future films. The other reason why this movie is iconic is because this was one of the first Blaxploitation films that actually depicted pimps and pushers in negative light, especially when it comes to pimps. The character of the pimp in a lot of Blaxploitation films was always handled a little bit more on a range from sympathetic to actually the hero. And also not that bad of a person who their women actually like to be around, and he treats them very well. Like, there's a movie I'm planning on reviewing later this year that is going to be almost the exact opposite of what I'm saying here. But yeah, a lot of times in Blaxploitation films, this character was always handled a little bit more positive, like a necessary evil kind of thing. Like, this was the low level guy who has a lot of information kind of character about the actual, like, really bad person in the story. But here, they're the bad guys. They are the villains of the story. This crime syndicate that Foxy Brown is going up against is doing everything. There's prostitution, there's hard drugs being pushed around. It's everything. It's everything and anything. And of course, and I say of course because it's the genre, they're all white. Surprisingly, though, I don't know if I've seen this in the films I have watched before, main villain is a white woman. So you do get a final showdown between a white woman and a black woman here in this film. But this is considered an iconic film, and this movie has gone on to cement Pam Grier as one of the greatest female action heroes of all time. She's become a feminist icon, and partially because not only did she star in these action films, and not only does she have training in Shotokan karate, jiu-jitsu, aikido, but let's not forget, in 1988 she was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer, given 18 months to live, and oh, by the way, she is still very much alive and still does films and TV shows. So, you know, she's a real life badass as well. Let's just keep that in mind. But we are, I made this claim that she's the original female action hero. And prior to this, like I said, I'm hard pressed to come up with anybody prior to 1974, when this movie comes out, and Coffee in 73, that does step up. The only other person who is ever brought up as like the OG action woman, which she very much is, one of the earlier action women, is Sigourney Weaver. But Alien is still 5 years away. Alien doesn't come out till 1979. So and the worst part about the fact that I am saying that she is the original action woman, not that that's a bad thing. The hard part about all of that is the fact that Quentin Tarantino said that. Look, I think I said it here on the show before. I don't like Quentin Tarantino. I find most of his movies to be overrated. I know I'm going to have to review 3 of them at some point for this show. And one of them I will gladly do, because Quentin Tarantino not only respects Pam Grier and loves this genre so much, he made a whole movie devoted to it, starring Pam Grier, titled Jackie Brown. Like, that's how big of a fan he is of her and of this genre of films. And unfortunately, I feel like Jackie Brown is kind of like the Tarantino film that gets forgotten about. It's that or Death Proof seems to be the two that people constantly forget are actually movies that he made. But not only does he respect her, he made a whole movie starring her with a name that is very reminiscent of her most iconic role. And to tell you the truth, if you like Tarantino films, or if you were a fan of the movie Promising Young Woman, I think you would enjoy this film. Obviously, I'm going to make the argument of this is an iconic film, so if you care about film history, watch this movie. But specifically, if you like Tarantino, it definitely shows. The influences here definitely show. But also, if you liked that if you're a guy, that vigilante movie, and if you're a woman, that horror movie, Promising Young Woman, you should definitely check this film out. Basic plot. Here we go. Basic plot is that Foxy Brown has a brother, Link. Link is in trouble with the local crime syndicate, because also they're loan sharks as well. Like I said, they do it all. And he owes them a lot of money, so he's crashing at her pad. He's kind of that guy who, he has this line early on who's like, I'm not athletic enough to be a football hero. I'm not good looking enough to run for office. I'm not, I can't speak in front of people like a pastor, but I've got ambition. Even though he owns loan sharks a ton of money and he's a coke pusher. So there's that. But he's crashing at Foxy Brown's place to kind of like lay low until things cool off. In the meantime, Foxy's boyfriend is an undercover cop who has been investigating this crime syndicate from within, but the operation got botched, so he's kind of entered like a little bit of like this witness protection, had reconstructive surgery done on his face to help conceal his identity better. But in what I thought was a truly brilliant, especially for the time period, like turn of events, Link, just solely wanting to get back on the good side of these loan sharks, not even like trying to pay off his debt at all, but just like to continue to be on their good side and push their drugs for them. He figures out that Foxy's boyfriend was this undercover cop investigating them and hands him over to him. He like drops a tip to the crime syndicate of, hey, I know where he is, and they do a drive-by shooting and kill him. of course, as Foxy Brown is holding his dying body in her arms, of course, which leads to this incredible scene where Foxy immediately figures out that her brother, like, stone cold turned on them, shows up at his apartment, shoots him in the ear and in the leg, tears up the apartment, and is like, give me a name, tell me what they're doing. And this is where she finds out that they have this escort service. It's not just like corner walkers, although it's not just like women working corners. It's an escort service for local judges and people in political power who, when the crime syndicates people start to get in trouble with the law, or their pushers get in trouble with the law, they send their escorts to the judges and other lawmakers, so that way they can kind of get a little bit, get a little something on the side, and then, I guess now the pusher can walk free. And so in what was considered at the time to be a very controversial thing, this movie was confiscated in the UK for many reasons, this being one of them. She joins as one of their escorts, so that way she can work from within. And she befriends this woman who she decides she is going to try and get her out because she has a family, and she's just kind of like sucked into almost like the cult of working for this crime syndicate. And this is very much the part of the movie where it starts to look a lot like Promising Young Woman, where basically they just embarrass the dickens out of this judge that they're supposed to be like doing something with. By the way, just a heads up, a lot of nudity in this movie, just so you're aware. A lot of blood. You're gonna hear the N-word. It's the whole package deal. Okay, you're gonna hear the homosexual slur that starts with the letter F. It's like the whole thing. You're gonna get the whole package deal with this movie. No wonder Tarintino loves it. All this movie was missing was a slow shot of somebody pouring a cup of coffee and a lot of shot of people's feet, and then it would have been like his perfect film. I don't know if you could hear Claire go ew from the corner of the room, but yeah, that's like one of his things. One thing leads to another. They eventually figure out that who she is, who she's related to, who they killed that she loves. And again, you can see the influences. They drug her and send her to this undisclosed location called the Ranch with a bunch of hicks who are going to do stuff to her. She escapes by burning them alive and scratching their eyes out with rusty coat hangers. Again, if you like Tarantino, it's all here, folks. And it's weird because, like, I could clearly tell that Tarantino loves this movie because there's so many of these moments where I'm like, yeah, he would do that. Yeah, he would do that. I enjoyed this so much more than I don't know if there was a single Tarantino film that I enjoyed as much as this movie. This is great that I get to trash him the entire review. Anyway, I got to compose myself here because we're also running out of time. Oh, gosh. So she escapes this undisclosed location, ranch, and she gets hooked up with in the community that she lives in, there is a vigilante community watch that their sole purpose in the community is to take down pushers and just like ruffians who are doing things that are just not good for the community. And she goes to these guys to try and get their help. And at first they are very hesitant towards helping her because they're like, well, here's the thing. We take care of our neighborhood, our community, but this is actually outside of our area, and so we don't know if we want to get involved with this. Now, the leader of this group is a the character's name is Oscar, but the actor's name is a guy named Bob Miner. I didn't know who Robert Lee Miner was prior to this film, but basically, very interesting guy. He has probably the most technical fight earlier on in the film when he is taking down a guy who is causing problems in the community. I couldn't figure out if this guy actually has any martial art background, but based off of the fight choreography and the fact that he was the stunt coordinator, I would assume he's got some kind of like Hapkido training or Aikido, something along those lines. But anyway, this guy was Mr. LA in the bodybuilding world before becoming basically a stuntman to black stars. He did the stunts for Jim Brown, for the Hammer Williamson, everybody and anybody. He's one of these stuntmans who has like more film credits than Wikipedia could possibly contain. There's movies that you have seen. I guarantee you have seen some of these movies and you did not know you saw him in it because he's a stunt guy. He did stunts in National Treasure. He did stunts in Holes, along with all of these other like Blaxploitation films, other action films. He did a lot of TV back in the 70s as well, $6 Million Man, shows like that. Lot of stunt work, did some acting roles here, was stunt coordinators on the film, and was the first African American to join the Stuntman Association, kind of like the stunt union worker guild thing. He was the first African American to be able to join that and became their second president later on. So cool little side thing that I learned while watching this film. But as these guys are pushing up against this idea of helping Foxy Brown with bringing justice, bringing vengeance to this whole situation, because just prior to this scene, when they also figure out who she is related to, they go kill her brother. And even though he did this nasty thing of turning on her, getting her love killed, she wants to get vengeance for him, for her boyfriend as well, but for her brother too, which was also like, wow, you're a person of high character as well. Like all throughout this movie, especially when this turn first happened, I was like, that POS, like who does this guy, like, again, for the time period, I was like, that is a crazy plot twist that he would just like so easily turn on them. Now, you may have noticed that I did not open this episode with a quote. And I was very tempted. There is a bar fight scene at one point in this movie with Foxy Brown and the woman that she befriends. They're in this bar and they're getting roughhoused by the people in the bar. And pretty early on, Foxy Brown picks up a bar stool and hits one of the people that's attacking them with the bar stool. And she says, "I've got my black belt in bar stool." Very tempting line to focus on this episode. But then we got to this scene. And this is what happens. I'm going to read you the full dialogue. So one of the guys, a part of the community watch, says this: "What do you really want?" Foxy Brown: "Justice." The community leader: "For what? For who? Your brother?" And now listen to what Foxy Brown says back. "And why not? It could be your brother, too, or your sister, or your children. I want justice for all of them. And I want justice for all of the people whose lives are bought and sold so that a few big shots can climb up on their backs and laugh at the law and laugh at human decency. But most of all, I want justice for a man. This man had love in his heart, and he died because he went out of his neighborhood to do what he thought was right." And then this guy responds, "Sister, I think what you're looking for is revenge. Justice and revenge are two different things." And then it ends with Foxy Brown saying, "You just handle the justice, and I'll handle the revenge myself. Now, obviously, that line, you handle the justice, I'll handle the revenge myself, is a great line. But I kid you not, this monologue that she has here about wanting justice, not just for her brother, but for a man who had love in his heart, who went outside of his neighborhood to do what was right, and for wanting justice for all the men, women, and children who are being abused by these people, by rich, people in authority who are abusing and laughing at the law so that for their own personal gain. I kid you not, I was moved by this line. It's, we've had some very thought-provoking lines here on the show, and obviously we've had some fun ones along the way as well. Let's not forget that for the review of Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, we talked about why in the world does nobody actually just try to capture a vampire and experiment on it versus always killing them. But, I don't know if I could really say much to this line that Foxy Brown says here. This is so moving. Justice for those who are being abused by people in power. Yeah, that is something worth fighting for. And maybe it does look a little bit like revenge, and those are two different things. But in this case, maybe it's not a universal thing, but in this case, you handle the justice, she'll handle the revenge. And trust me, folks, she does. She handles the revenge so well. The main villain's love interest, the woman who is the main villain, her love interest, the guy, ends up with his junk pickled. Yep. Again, this has got to be Tarantino's favorite movie, because that's got him written all over it. But that's not the best bit of penis-related content in this movie. The best part, I know, weird sentence. The funniest scene in the whole movie was way earlier on, Pam Grier and her boyfriend, they're at the hospital, and he's waking up from his reconstructive surgery, and they're gonna try and sneak it in, if you know what I mean. But the nurse walks in, and she's like, "Oh no, we will not have any of that. No." So Foxy Brown's kind of dressing back up, and the nurse goes to kind of wash the boyfriend's body. So she removes the that gown thing that you wear in the hospital, and you don't see it, but it is implied that he is hard. And am I gonna have to mark this one explicit? I might have to. He is hard. You don't see it, but the nurse looks at it and goes, "No, sir, we will not have any of that." And she smacks it, and you just hear him go, "Oh!" It's great scene. Terrible follow-up to what I just got done talking about of fighting for justice for those who are being abused by people in power. Love it. Might pin that to the Instagram account, but we're running out of time, so I guess I gotta wrap this one up. We're gonna cut this one close, folks. But once again, thank you for listening to today's episode, and once again, thank you to all of the women out there who are continuing to make a path for future generations of women to continue to tell their stories and show just how strong they are. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. Share this episode with a friend. Follow Kung Fu Pizza Party on Instagram at KungFuPizzaPrty, and on Letterboxd at KungFuPizzaPrty, and check out our YouTube channel, Studio 219, where you can see all of the great video content that I produce. This has been Kung Fu Pizza Party, where I've delivered high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and served up some wisdom one slice at a time.